You know, for a long, long time, we've kind of held on to this idea that complex language is our thing. It's what makes us special, right? The one thing that separates us humans from, well, every other animal on the planet. But what if we've been wrong about that? In this explainer, we're going to dig in and see.
So, is language really what makes us human? We're going to tackle that head on. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of how we speak, how we actually learn to do it, and what's firing inside our brains when we talk. But first, I want to start with a story. A story that pretty much turns everything we thought we knew on its head.
All right, so our investigation kicks off with a really special ape. One who, well, he kind of blurred the lines between human and animal communication in a way that no one saw coming.
Okay, so meet Kanzi. He's our ape language superstar. Back in 1981, he was just a baby, hanging out while his mom was getting these English lessons from a language coach. Now, the crazy thing is, the researchers weren't even paying attention to him. They were totally focused on his mom. But then, they noticed something absolutely incredible. Kanzi was picking up the language just by watching.
And get this, Kanzi wasn't just copying sounds or gestures. No way. He was actually learning faster than his own mother. She was really struggling with syntax, the idea that the order of words changes the whole meaning. She just couldn't get her head around how tickle you is different from you tickle. But Kanzi? He got it perfectly. This made him the very first ape to pick up language spontaneously, figuring out grammar without anyone sitting down and teaching.
So the real wow moment, the proof, came one day when a coach just casually said to Kanzi, who was playing with some toys, "Make the dog bite the snake." And without a single moment of hesitation, Kanzi picks up the stuffed snake and puts it right in the stuffed dog's mouth. I mean, this wasn't some trained trick. This was it. This was the proof that he understood syntax, that word order is everything. For language researchers, this was an absolute game changer.
Kanzi's story is incredible, right? But it really forces us to take a step back and ask a more fundamental question. What even is language? Seriously, if an ape can understand it, then we'd better get really clear on what we're actually talking about.
So, at its most basic level, language is just how we use symbols, whether that's spoken words, written letters, or signs, to get a thought from my brain into your brain. And hey, if the definition is really just about communicating with meaningful symbols, well, suddenly, it seems like maybe we humans aren't the only members of that club. Okay, so how do we build something this ridiculously complex? Well, it turns out that all 7,000 or so languages in the world are built from the exact same 3 building blocks. Think of them like Legos. Step 1, you've got phonemes. These are just the smallest little units of sound, like or t. Then you snap those sounds together to make morphemes, which are the smallest chunks that actually have meaning, like the word speech or the ending ing. And finally, you have grammar. That's the instruction manual that tells you how to put all those pieces together to build actual sentences that make sense.
Now, to put this into perspective, think about this. In English, we only use about 40 of those distinct sounds. Just 40 phonemes. That's it.
And here's where it gets mind-blowing. From those 40 little sounds, we can build over 616,000 words. That's what's in the Oxford English Dictionary anyway. And then, those words can be arranged and rearranged into a practically infinite number of sentences. We're talking everything from, "Can I have some water?" all the way up to the place of Shakespeare. It's just this incredible generative system of pure creativity.
So if the system is that huge and complex, how on earth do we all manage to master it? Well, our language journey starts, believe it or not, almost the second we're born, and it builds in these really clear, predictable stages. And what's amazing is that this progression is pretty much universal for all of us. At just 4 months old, babies can already understand what's being said to them. We call that receptive language. Then comes the babbling, where they're basically practicing every sound from every language in the world. It's wild. By 10 months, that babbling starts to sound more like the language they hear at home. And get this, deaf babies will even babble with their hands. Then you hit the 1-word stage, then the 2-word stage, and before you know it, bam, they're putting together full sentences.
Yeah, that 2-word stage is often called telegraphic speech because it's short and punchy, like an old school telegram. You get stuff like "want juice," or my personal favorite, "no pants." But here's what's so fascinating. Even with these super simple phrases, they almost always follow the rules of syntax.
An English-speaking toddler will say black cat, not cat black. The rules are just sinking in, almost like magic.
Okay, so this incredibly fast, super structured learning process, it's led to one of the biggest debates in all of science. It's the classic showdown, nature versus nurture. Are we just born with the ability to learn language? Or is it something we have to pick up completely from the world around us?
So in one corner, you've got B.F. Skinner, reppin' Team Nurture. He argued that we learn language through simple reinforcement. A baby babbles something that sounds a bit like milk, they get milk, and boom, a reward. That connection gets stronger. But in the other corner, you have Noam Chomsky for Team Nature. He came along and said, no, no, no. He believed we have an innate ability, that all humans are born with a kind of universal grammar hardwired into our brains, ready to learn any language. So, who won the debate? Well, the verdict today is that it's not really an either-or situation. It seems to be a mix of both. Most researchers now agree it's nature and nurture working together. It looks like we're born with this amazing biological gift for language, but that gift has to be switched on and shaped by hearing language and interacting with the world.
Okay, so that whole idea of an innate capacity for language, that leads us to a really important question. If it's built in, where exactly in the brain does language live?
Well, a huge amount of what we know actually comes from studying something called aphasia. That's a language problem that's often caused by a stroke or a brain injury. And it's kind of like, if you want to know how a car engine works, sometimes the best way is to see what happens when a part breaks. By seeing what goes wrong, we can map out how the system is supposed to work. For example, someone with aphasia might be able to speak perfectly fine, but not be able to read, or they could sing a song, but not speak the words. This shows us that different language jobs are handled by different parts of the brain. And two of the absolute key areas for language are Broca's area and Wernicke's area. They do very different things. If you have damage to Broca's area, it messes with your ability to produce speech. It's like the words are on the tip of your tongue, you know exactly what you want to say, but you just can't get them out. But if you have damage to Wernicke's area, that affects your ability to understand language and speak in a way that makes sense. You might be able to talk a mile a minute, but the words just come out as total gibberish, a kind of word salad.
This is so important because this distinction shows us something really profound. It proves that thinking and language are tangled up together, for sure, but they are not the same thing. You can have a perfectly complete thought in your head, even if you can't find the words to say it out loud. And that brings us right back to where we started.
So, if we accept that language shapes our thoughts, what in the world is an ape like Kanzi thinking? We started this whole thing by asking if language is what truly makes us human. But maybe that's not even the most interesting question anymore. Maybe the real question we should be asking is this. What new kinds of thoughts, what new kinds of consciousness become possible when that biggest barrier of all, the barrier of language between species, starts to crumble? Now that is something to think about.